5. The next thing what we have to discuss is about intermodal dispersion and the RMS pulse broadening in a fiber, which is total broadening of a light pulse. Okay, so here what we have discussed in the last session was about determining an expression for delta TS. Okay, and this is nothing but intermodal dispersion. Intermodal dispersion, what we have calculated. So you can see that by considering two different waves, intermodal dispersion by considering two different waves. One is axial ray, the other one is meridional ray. Okay, so based on these two concepts, we have considered the difference, or what we call it as a delay difference, and we have determined, or we have arrived at this particular equation 3.27, that is delta TS. Okay, so using this delta TS, we will determine an expression to find the RMS pulse broadening in a fiber, which is of a step index fiber. Okay, similar to this. And this was the thing what we have taken as an expression for delta TG for a graded index fiber. Okay, so here no derivation, so only expression to be known, followed by total broadening of a light pulse. This again they might ask you for 6 marks. They might ask you for 6 marks. So first thing what we consider is a step index fiber, and the intermodal dispersion is nothing but the RMS pulse broadening which results from the dispersion mechanism in the fiber. Okay, so whatever we have considered earlier delta TS, that is a delay difference by considering two different optical rays which are propagating in a fiber, that is axial ray and meridional ray. Now if I go with the same step index fiber, the intermodal dispersion is nothing but the RMS pulse broadening, so which results from the dispersion. Okay, so we have to determine RMS pulse broadening. They might ask you directly derive an expression for total broadening of a light pulse, or they might give you the expression directly, this one 3.34. So this expression might be given, and it may be asked to derive the RMS pulse broadening sigma S is equal to this 3.34 RHS. Okay. So if I consider a optical input to the fiber, and it is a pulse with unit area. Okay, so this is the assumption what we are going to make. We consider an optical fiber, and within the optical fiber we have an optical input, or optical signal is coupled into a fiber, which is a pulse P of Pi of t, which is indicating Pi, indicating the input power. Okay, input optical power. So it is Pi of t of unit area. Okay, so this is the assumption what we make as illustrated in the figure. So this diagram, okay, so this is a unit pulse what we consider, and the unit pulse what we consider with the interval minus delta TS by 2 to plus delta TS by 2. So this is the interval minus delta TS by 2 to plus delta TS by 2. Now this is the unit pulse what we consider, that is integral of Pi of t into dt, which is unit area, and it is from minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay, so this is a general expression what we take for a input optical pulse now, and where Pi of t has a constant amplitude of 1 by delta Ts over the range minus delta Ts by 2 to plus delta Ts by 2. So this diagram, okay, so it has amplitude 1 by delta Ts, and at the between the interval minus delta Ts by 2 to plus delta Ts by 2. So this is a pulse. Now, the RMS pulse broadening occurs in a multimode step index fiber due to dispersion. So that is what we are finding, the RMS pulse broadening due to intermodal dispersion. Okay, so that is given by sigma s. Sigma s. This s indicates step index fiber. Then this is obtained by considering the standard variation. This can be obtained by considering standard variation. What can be obtained? RMS pulse broadening. RMS pulse broadening can be obtained by considering the standard deviation, and it is given by the variance. So that is sigma s square. Now sigma s square is equal to m2 minus m1 square, and here m2 is considered as the mean value of a pulse. So whatever pulse we have taken within the interval minus delta Ts by 2 to plus delta Ts by 2 with an amplitude of 1 by delta Ts, its mean value is m2 and mean square value is m1 square. And this m2, which is nothing but a mean value, is also considered as the first temporal moment of a pulse. Okay, it is nothing but mean value of a pulse, which is also termed as first temporal moment. And m2, m2 is a second, sorry, what I told is m1, so this is a mean value, this is the mean square value of the pulse. Now, so these are the two expressions which is to be considered for mean value and mean square value. Okay, so only difference what you observe is in terms of t, so which is t power 1 and t power 2. So this indicates mean value, this indicates mean square value. So m1 is mean value, m2 is mean square value. Now, if I consider the mean value of the unit pulse, the mean value of the unit pulse is always equal to 0. So mean value of the unit pulse is 0, which means that this is 0. So there is no existence of the term m1, which is the mean value of the pulse. So if m1 is 0, m1 square is also 0. So anyway, it doesn't exist. So we are considering or assuming it to be 0. And assuming this is maintained for the output pulse. So sigma s square will be equal to only m2 minus m1 square, which is nothing but m2 minus 0, which is m2 only. So which is equal to the expression for m2, that is integral of t square into p of t into dt with the interval minus infinity to plus infinity. So this is what we get for m2, which is sigma s square. Now we are integrating this with respect to t over the time interval minus delta Ts by 2 to plus delta Ts by 2 with the amplitude 1 by delta Ts. Here we have taken minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay, sorry, this is minus infinity, this is plus infinity. So instead of that, we are going to consider this minus delta Ts by 2 to plus delta Ts by 2 with the amplitude 1 by delta Ts. So sigma s square is equal to applying the limit, amplitude and t square dt. This is unit, so it is 1. So it is 1 by delta Ts, which is the amplitude of this particular pulse, So 1 by delta Ts into T square into dt. Now if I integrate, I'll get 1 by 3 into delta Ts by 2 the whole square. So 1 by delta Ts, T square is, integral of T square is T cube divided by 3. So this is T cube by 3 with delta Ts by 2 to minus delta Ts by 2. Now, if I substitute, I'll get 1 by 3 delta Ts by 2 the whole square. So you can simplify that and you can see. So after the substitution of delta Ts, we get this. What is that delta Ts? Delta Ts is what we have calculated here. 3.27. Delta Ts is L into square of the numerical aperture by 2n1 into c. So this we have calculated earlier. The same is used for substituting for delta Ts, this value. So if I substitute, I'll get sigma s is equal to L into square of numerical aperture by 4 root 3 n1 into c. So this is the expression what you are supposed to get, which is RMS pulse broadening due to intermodal dispersion. Okay, so remember, whenever it is asked to determine total broadening of a unit pulse or RMS pulse broadening due to dispersion, or to derive sigma s, you have to derive by considering these concepts along with already derived result for delta Ts. Okay, only the substitution of delta Ts is required at the end of the derivation part. Then, similar to this is related to step index. Similarly, delta Tg is Ln1 into delta square divided by 20 into root 3 c. Okay, so this is the expression what we have directly based on delta Tg. So whatever we have considered earlier to derive sigma s is based on delta Ts. This is for SIF, step index fiber. And the sigma g is based on delta Tg. This is for graded index fiber. Okay, so you don't have any derivation for GIF, you have only derivation for SIF. Okay, so these two derivations you can derive it based on which you might get either to derive delta Ts or to derive sigma s. Okay, any one can be asked for 6 or 8 marks. So whatever requirement you are supposed to write in terms of diagram, in terms of theory and in terms of equations, those are to be written. Later you have to derive it. Any doubt in this derivation which is based on delta Ts?
No, sir.
Okay. So this is a problem based on the previous derivation what we have done to find delta Ts or to find delta Tg depending on a fiber. If it is step index, you get an expression for delta Ts and find it. If it is for graded index fiber, you get an expression for delta Tg and find it. Okay. And again you can see here, either they may ask you to find N1 or they might ask you to find delta. If delta Ts is given, C is known, which is normally 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second, or even it might be given as 2.998 into 10 power 8 meters per second. Okay, so if this is the case, you can solve it based on the concept. Next, same thing, you can see sigma s is calculated. So here you can see delta Ts is calculated. Now, This is based on the previous what we have already considered earlier. One is bandwidth length product, then BT max, that is maximum bit rate in ISI. What we have done under intersymbol interference to avoid ISI, BT or B is less than or equal to 1 by 2 times tau. Okay, so these are the expressions what you already know. So these expressions are to be used in the problem. Then next you can see fiber given is graded index. So you are making use of the expression which is sigma g, or if it is asked delta Tg, so you can calculate for a graded index fiber. Then so again see whatever we have derived earlier, we can expect a problem under that. Okay, if derivation is asked, most of the time they will include a problem based on the derived result. Okay, or they may ask you to explain some concepts of dispersion, some Rayleigh scattering, etc., followed by a problem. Okay, so like that, whenever you consider these questions, and I hope you already got a circular from the university regarding 10 questions. Out of that, you can choose any 5. Okay, so if that is the case, then you can easily answer all the 5 questions if you study 3 modules. Okay, so coming back to the concept, next topic, we have optical fiber connectors. See, earlier I just told you about the joining process in a fiber. Fibers are to be joined, and we have different problems whenever we try to join a fiber. Okay, because of its size, that is the main concern when we consider a joining process of a fiber. But there are requirements wherein the fibers are to be joined once, means the fiber is joined once and the link is established and the information transfer is done over that particular optical fiber link. And in another term or in another case where the optical link is considered, where the optical fibers are joined but not permanently, they are not joined permanently. For the time being, they are supposed to join for a particular application or for a particular time, and later it can be removed. So that is what we consider under connecting the fiber or joining the fiber. Okay, and we come across a temporary joints and permanent joints. As I told you, temporary joint is only for the time being. It is the fibers are joined and later it can be removed. Whereas permanent joint, it is a fiber which are joined permanently, so it is not removed. Once it is joined, it cannot be removed. So optical fiber links in common with any line communication system have a requirement for both jointing and termination of the transmission medium. Termination is nothing but removal, joining the fiber and removal of the joints. So that is temporary, okay, or permanent joints. So in an optical fiber communication system, in order to increase fiber length, there is a need to join the length of fiber or to join the fiber. Obviously, to increase the length, we are supposed to join n number of fibers. Then the interconnection of fiber causes some loss of optical power. So this is a known fact. Whenever I consider an optical fiber is joined with another optical fiber, the power or the optical power which is emitted from the fiber is to be coupled into another fiber, but whatever amount of optical power which is emitted from the first optical fiber may not fully couple into the second fiber. So that is resulting in a loss of the optical power. Okay. So like if I take a general example, what we normally see across when you roam around, say you can see some of the water pipe connection, and one pipe is joined to another pipe, okay, with some joints. And if it is done, you may see that in some pipes there might be some leakage of water by a drop. One droplet is coming out of that particular joint. Okay. Similarly, if we join a fiber, some amount of light is coming out of that actually the fiber. Wherever you have used a joint, there might be a loss of power, but you cannot see that like water. But that is the example what I told you. Then different techniques are used to interconnect a fiber. So we consider different techniques. So one is using a device called a splicer, that is a permanent joint of a cable or a fiber, and a temporary joint is done by a connector. So we have two devices to join the fiber. One is a splice or a splicer, the other one is a connector. So we have two different devices which are to be used to join the fiber. Then, so coming to this fiber splice, demountable fiber connectors or simple connectors. Okay. So these are semi-permanent or permanent joints which find major use in most of the optical fiber telecommunication system, analogous to electrical soldered joint. Okay, you might have soldered some electrical components. So if you solder it, it is a semi-permanent or a permanent joint, similar to a semi-permanent or a permanent joint. Then the demountable fiber connectors, these are removable joints which allow easy, fast manual coupling and uncoupling of fibers, analogous to electrical plugs and sockets. Okay, you might have seen the electrical plugs and socket. What you do, whenever you require, you just connect the plug and to the socket, and whenever you don't require it, you remove it. Okay, so similar way we have a fiber connector. Then whenever I want to join a fiber, that is fiber to fiber joining process is done, we look into two matters. One is low loss, the other one is reduced distortion. Okay, so in the first case, some of the optical power may be lost. Optical power may be lost, which results in loss. So that should be very less. I cannot say no loss manner. Okay, practically it is not possible. So we will say that it's a negligible loss or low loss manner. So we look into this particular factor. The other one is reduced distortion. You might get an optical output, optical power, but it should be with very less distortion, or it should be with reduced distortion. There may not be any loss of information, but there might be distortion, with which it is very difficult to receive the optical power with certain information. It may be difficult to decode the information due to distortion. So these interconnections occur at the optical source, at the detector, and at intermediate joints within the cable. Okay, so using these devices, we can join a fiber to another fiber, or we can have a joint at the optical source, or we can have a joint at the optical detector or a photo detector. So these are the points where we can join. Say for example, optical source is connected to a optical fiber. That is one joining process. And optical fiber is connected to a photo detector or an optical detector. It is one of the joining process. Or intermediate joints, like one optical fiber is connected to another optical fiber. Okay, so all are joints. No, the same thing what I told earlier. Permanent joint is by using a splicer. The demountable joint is using a connector. Then one more very important concept is required. Whenever you try to join the optical fiber, the physical structure of the optical fiber should also be proper. It means that both the fibers what you use for joining should be ideal. Okay, in terms of what? In terms of their geometrical and waveguide characteristics. Geometrical in the sense physical structure of the fiber. Physical structure include the core and the cladding surfaces. And waveguide characteristics depends on the fiber ends. The fiber ends, or what we call it as fiber end faces. Okay, and the fiber end face qualities. So if this is a fiber, and if this is a fiber, this is a fiber end face. So if I want to join these two, these faces should be proper. I cannot join a fiber like this. See here, the fiber end face in this fiber is smooth. It is proper, but here it is not. And this is to be perpendicular to the axis. This is axis. So this is not perpendicular to the axis. This is not perpendicular to the axis. Okay, so this is nothing but fiber end face is qualities. It should be proper. Okay, so if I consider misalignment, like if I using a splicer or if I use a connector to join the fiber, there might be some mechanical misalignment, because without any mechanical misalignment, if the fibers are to be joined, then a proper method should be adopted, or a proper method should be used, wherein either by using a connector or a splicer the fibers are joined with the two factors what we have considered. One is for low loss, the other is for reduced distortion. So these two factors are to be noted or to be considered. But it doesn't happen actually practically. There will be some misalignment, and that misalignment is a mechanical misalignment which occurs in a fiber. So what exactly is that mechanical misalignment? So it is a major problem when joining two fibers due to their microscopic size. Okay, so we have discussed this earlier. The main problem with the optical fiber joining process is its size, because it is very small. It's a microscopic size. Then radiation losses results from the mechanical misalignment. Okay, radiation loss normally occurs whenever there is a misalignment, like the fiber end faces are not properly prepared, or the fiber end faces are not smoother, or the fiber end faces are not perpendicular to the core axis. So if such things happen, then the mechanical then radiation loss exists due to such misalignment. And the magnitude of radiation loss depends on the degree of misalignment. It's a known thing. The radiation's magnitude, or what we call it as intensity, depends on the degree of misalignment. So if the misalignment is higher, then radiation loss will be very high. If it is still higher, it is higher. If it is small or lesser, the radiation loss will be less. Then the three fundamental mechanical misalignment which is considered or which exist are these three. Remember, this is again a very important topic. They might ask you explain mechanical misalignment in fiber and explain different mechanical misalignment with the diagram. Okay, so we have to explain. You have to explain what are mechanical misalignment, why it exists, and what are the types of losses due to mechanical misalignment. And what happens if mechanical misalignment is more? And the three fundamental types of mechanical misalignments are these three with the diagram. Okay, normally it is for 6 marks, plus the explanation of mechanical misalignment will be another 2 marks. So normally it is 6 to 8 marks. Okay, it ranges from 6 to 8. Then one is a lateral or axial misalignment. Then second, longitudinal or end separation. Third one, angular misalignment. Okay, so what is axial or lateral misalignment? This axial or lateral misalignment or displacement results when the axes of the two fibers are separated by a distance d. So if I consider this one fiber, this another fiber, the fiber has got the axis at the fiber core, and when the axis is nothing but two axes, so it is axis of the two fibers are separated by a distance d. This axis or the first fiber and the second fiber should not be separated by any distance. If it is separated, then it will be like this. For example, if I consider this is fiber which is joined, two fibers are joined, actually this should be the fiber axis. So this is the axis of second fiber, this is the axis of the first fiber. But this may be the axis and this may be the fiber. This is the axis, this may not be the axis. Like this. These two are separated by a distance d. See the diagram. The two axes are separated by distance d. First fiber, second fiber. Then longitudinal or end separation. Longitudinal or end separation occurs when the fibers have the same axis but they have a gap between their end faces. End faces are this. Okay, they are in the same axis, but end faces they are separated. So see. Okay, and the fiber may be joined, but there is a gap. This end separation. Fiber and faces are separated. Lateral or axial. Axes of the fibers are separated by a distance d. Then angular displacement. Angular displacement occurs when the two axes form an angle that the fiber and faces are do not remain parallel. Actually, the fiber and faces are to be parallel. This is parallel. But there is an angle which is formed between the fiber and faces. Maybe like this, theta, or maybe like this. Okay, so this is angular separation. So these three are very important when it comes with the misalignment concept. Then, if I consider the derivation, a small derivation is there. You can go through that. I'll just give you the idea how it is derived. Simple one. What they might ask is explain the axial misalignment in optical fibers, or derive an expression for the output power in the optical fiber with axial misalignment. Okay, so whenever I say output power from one fiber, output power in a fiber from another fiber where the light gets coupled into it is the maximum amount of light. But due to misalignment, there is a loss. There is a loss, information loss, or the optical power is lost. So that we have to observe. And there is a point at which the light is maximum, or what we call the optical power is maximum. Okay. So axial misalignment. So to illustrate the effects of axial misalignment, let us consider a simple case of two identical step index fiber of radii A. So this is one fiber, emitting fiber, this is receiving fiber. And we can see that common core area. This is a common core area. And at this point, the optical power is maximum. So here there is no optical power, here there is no optical power, because the axes are not aligned. If the axes are aligned, then this is a fibers. These are two fibers. This is a core. But here, if this is a case, and if I consider this, now you can see that axial misalignment is very less, and the area at which the optical power is maximum is more or bigger. Here also you can see that. Now you can see more misalignment. Optical power is lesser. It means that the area, you can see, the area is very small. The density at this, the power density at this point is lesser, whereas the power density at this point is more, because the area is more. Okay, so if that is what we mean, the degree of misalignment, the degree of loss or radiation depends on the misalignment. So the intensity of power loss depends on the degree of misalignment. So if the misalignment is more and more, the loss is more. Okay, so that is what we mean. The common area will be reduced if the misalignment is more. If the common area is reduced, the power density in the common area also reduces. Okay, so that is what we consider here. These are the expression you have to practice. And we consider uniform modal distribution in the emitting fiber. So emitting fiber, we take it as a first fiber, and receiving fiber, we take it as a second fiber. And area common is nothing but a common area where the power density will be more, or whatever power coupled from emitting fiber, that power has to be efficiently coupled into the receiving fiber. And due to the misalignment, there is an area where the power density is high. So that area is common for both emitting fiber and a receiving fiber. Then in this you can see A common or area common is given by this 2a square into r cos d by 2a minus d into a square minus d square by 4 to the power half. A is the fiber core radius and d is the diameter, or what we call it as distance. Distance of separation, not diameter here, because we're considering misalignment. So distance between the two axes, fiber core axis, D, this one. No. The coupling efficiency is simply the ratio of common core area to the core end face area. Okay, so this eta defines the efficiency in a fiber. So it is given by A common, or the area which is common for both emitting and receiving fiber, by area, that is pi a square, or what we call it as normally A area of a circle is pi r square if r is a radius. So here radius is A, so it is pi a square. So I'll get this expression. This is for step index. Now we look into the same concept which is for a graded index fiber. Just here you can just go through that. So here, if I consider a graded index fiber, I will consider a parabolic profile with alpha equal to 2, and the power density is going to change at different points or different area or different surfaces in the fiber. So these are the two things what we consider. One is P of 0 and P of R. P of 0 is P of R. So P of R is a power at a particular point R, or P of 0 is a power density at origin. Power density at the origin, which is nothing but a common area. Then this you have to derive. This is the first expression what you have to practice, followed by just the integration. So you have to thorough with integration. So integration you have to do. Then after integration you will get this, which is pi a square by 2 into P of 0. So you can see core of the emitting fiber, core of the receiving fiber. This is area A2, this is area A1. These are the theory, you just go through that. Now this is the final thing what we have to get, the received power. Received power is again this equation. So equation you have to practice, no other choice. So P is equal to twice of integral, again one more integral, P of R into R dr d theta. Now P is equal to 2 times P of 0, because P of R and P of 0 are related here. So here you can see P is this, P of R is P of 0 into 1 minus R by A to the power. So the same thing I have substituted here, 1 minus R by A to the power 2 into R dr d theta. Then I will just form a right angle triangle, or a part of these two fibers emitting and receiving. I will take half of this, and this I will consider, because I have to find the power coupled at this particular point, this region. I will find only for half. If I know the power which is in this region, I can find it in this region, because these two areas are same. So if I get power here as P, this region power is also P, which is 2P or P plus P. Okay, the same concept here I am considering. So I will carry out integration. So again, integration you have to do. So this results in P1. P1 indicates the power in the area 1, and P2 indicates power in area 2. So instead of taking power in P1 and P2, again calculating for P2 from P1, what I do is I will find power in the area 1, that is area A1, which is giving me P1. So the total power will be twice of P1, because P1 and P2 are same. So I can do that. So the same thing here I have taken PT, our total power is twice of P1. So whatever I get here will be multiplied by 2. So this is the expression what I have to arrive at. PT is equal to 2 by pi. See, there is no choice in skipping this, because they might ask you explain the axial misalignment. The thing is, you have to note down, or you have to remember 4 expressions, and once you remember 4 expressions, you should know what to integrate. If the integration is done properly, you will arrive at this particular result. And there might be a problem to find the total power, which is due to the axial misalignment in a fiber. Okay, so this has to be used to find PT in a problem. So nothing difficult in getting the result for this PT. So you should know what is D, you should know what is A. So same thing in each and every term here. So we can easily find what is PT. Now this is when the axial misalignment is more. We have taken it earlier, axial misalignment is more here. This distance is more. If axial misalignment is small compared to a core radius, maybe smaller. Okay, so this is a very small misalignment. Then the equation is this. Direct equation, Pt is equal to P into 1 minus 8d by 3. So see that whenever a problem is given, if the mechanical misalignment is very small, you have to make use of equation 1, this equation. If mechanical alignment is more, then you have to make use of this equation. So d by a is less than 0.4. So this is accurate whenever d by a is less than 0.4, which is nothing but d by a, if I consider to be 0.4, d is equal to 0.4 a. It means if d is equal to 0.4 times the fiber core radius, the distance of separation of the axis is equal to 0.4 times the radius, then you can go with this PT. So it is small. For smaller values or smaller misalignment, I can go with this expression. If it is more, I have to go with this expression. Then this again, the coupling loss for a fiber is given by LF. LF indicates fiber loss. Okay, fiber loss is equal to minus 10 log of eta F. Eta F is efficiency of the fiber. Efficiency of the fiber is defined as the optical power output by input. Okay, whatever I consider as a gain, output power by input power will give me a gain. Similarly, the efficiency is given by the output optical power which is received to the optical power which is emitted. Then, if the separation is S, that is a second, not axial, the longitudinal separation or end phase separation, then LF, fiber loss, is minus 10 log of A divided by A plus S into tan into theta C. Okay, so these are the expressions, no need to worry about that. So this is a fiber loss due to mechanical axial misalignment. This is a fiber loss due to mechanical longitudinal or end separation. Then this is a loss whenever the mechanical misalignment is angular, theta, angular type. So this is expression. LF is minus 10 log, etc. Okay, so this you no need to remember. Okay, just go through the coupling loss expression for axial misalignment, and this is not required. This is also not required to buy it. But you should note that there are the fiber related losses whenever the axial misalignment is considered, or longitudinal misalignment is also considered, or the angular misalignment is considered. But you have to get the expression for power in the axial misalignment. What is the total power in the during the axial misalignment in a fiber? So one derivation you should know. Then fiber splicing. Okay, so earlier we have just seen mechanical misalignment, whether you go for a connector or whether you go for a splicer, whatever. So again, fiber splicer is a permanent or a semi-permanent joint between the two fibers. Okay, so we consider here a process of joining using a splicer. Again, I don't want to drag more into theory under this. I'll directly go to the concept. They might ask you like this. Normally, it is a question which is asked for 8 marks. 2 plus 6. Like, what are splicing? What are the different types of splicing? Carrying 2 marks. Then explain the fiber splicing process, or explain the different types of fiber splicing. So we have three different fiber splicing process which is to be considered. One is fusion splicing technique, V-grooved splicing technique or V-grooved mechanical splicing, elastic tube splicing. So these are the three different splicing what we consider. So the thing is, whenever we consider a fiber connector, we are just using a connector which is a device, and we are just joining a fiber. Whereas if I consider a process of splicing, we are joining it permanently. So in order to join permanently, we use a splicer and we bond it together thermally. It means that we heat it, and once it is heated, the joint is permanent. Okay, so that is what the splicing technique means. So fusion splicing, the first one. Fusion splicers are made by thermally bonding together a prepared fiber ends. So a properly prepared fiber end which is perpendicular to the axis, which is smoother, and fiber end faces are properly prepared. So such fibers are bonded together, thermally bonded together. Thermal in the sense you are heating it. Okay, so they are thermally bonded together. So how? See here. So this is a fiber, one fiber. This is another fiber. You can see that here a joining process is done here. Okay, and these are fiber holders, the mechanical setup for this splicing process. And these are micro manipulatable fiber holders. So you can manipulate the distance. You can change the distance. You can change the spacing. You can drag the fiber here in this direction, or you can bring it to this direction. So these are micro manipulatable fiber holders. You can see that micro manipulation can be done. Okay, and electric arc or a laser fusion welder. So this is used to heat, and these are the optical fibers to be spliced. So this is emitting fiber, this is receiving fiber, or this is fiber 1, this is fiber 2. They are connected, they are spliced. So using an electric arc or a laser fusion welder. So that is a equipment used to thermally bond the optical fiber. It is heated and it is they are joined. So in this method, the fiber ends are first pre-aligned and butted together. Butted is nothing but joining here. This is done either in a grooved fiber holder or under a microscope with micro manipulators. Okay, so this is obviously done using under a microscope because it is a micro manipulation device or a fiber holder. The butt joint is then heated with an electric arc. First it is joined. After joining, it is heated using an electric arc or a laser pulse, so that the fiber ends are momentarily melted and hence bonded together. Then this technique can produce a very slow splicing loss, less than 0.06 dB. So this is very important. So whenever the fibers are joined and they are heated to thermally heated to bond, the loss should be less, because you know that the fiber is made up of a plastic or a glass, and whenever you see that they are heated, because we are using electric arc or a laser, so that we are heating the fiber, and once we heat the optical fiber, you know that on heating a material which is a glass or a plastic, its characteristic may change, or the structure of the fiber may change. Like if you heat it, there might be melting which can happen. Okay, even though it is a very small microscopic structure, there might be small variation in the structure of the fiber, due to which there might be a loss. That loss is nothing but splice losses, but it is very low. But what is the disadvantage? This is the advantage. But disadvantage we have is surface damage due to handling. Surface damage may happen whenever it is handled, because we are placing it under a holder, fiber holder. Fiber holder is used to hold the optical fiber. Whenever it is used to hold the optical fiber, the fiber size should be bigger. If the fiber size is very small, microscopic size, it is very difficult to hold the fiber of such size using a fiber holder. So that is micro manipulatable fiber holder. So it is very difficult. So it may damage. Then surface defect growth created during heating. The same thing what I told you. Whenever it is heated, surface may have some defect, micro defect. Then residual stresses. Residual stresses, because if I heat a glass or a plastic, there might be some carbon which may deposited. Okay, you might have seen that whenever you just try to burn any plastic or any glass material or any glass piece using a candle, you might have seen that some candle or a flame, you might have seen that some black residues may be occupied on that particular surface of a glass or a plastic. So that is residual stress induced near the joint as a result of changes in the chemical composition arising from the material melting. Okay, so material melting occurs, and due to which all this residue may be deposited, which is a drawback. Then V-grooved splice, that is a second type of splicing. In a V-grooved splicing technique, the fiber end faces are first butted together in a V shape. So you can see that this is a V-shaped groove, and once they are placed, they are properly aligned, and there is a adhesive which is used, fiber end epoxed or clamped here. Epoxed is nothing but, say, it is joined using some gel or adhesive. Okay, so they are held in a means of a cover plate. Okay, this is a substrate or a cover plate, V-grooved substrate, on which we have two fibers, fiber 1 and fiber 2. They are joined, and fiber end faces are epoxed or they are clamped using an adhesive. So they are placed in a grooved silicone, plastic, ceramic or a metal substrate. The splice loss in this method depends strongly on the fiber size and eccentricity. Okay. Then elastic tube splicing, the third one. Elastic tube splicing is using an elastic into which you are inserting two fibers on either sides. So it is a unique device that automatically performs lateral, longitudinal and angular alignment. So it performs all these three alignments. So that is the advantage of elastic tube splicing. It performs automatically a lateral alignment, longitudinal alignment and angular alignment. So there is a very less chances of mechanical misalignment such as lateral, longitudinal or angular. It splices multimode fibers to give losses in the same range as commercial fusion splices, but much less equipment and skills are needed. So this is elastic material. This is a fiber inserted. This is one more fiber inserted. So this is the emitting fiber. This is the receiving fiber. And you can see that there is a tapered opening here. Then capillary tube size lesser than the fiber radii. So whatever you consider, so this fiber is inserted from this side, this fiber is inserted from this side, and this is a elastic material. So into an elastic material, from either sides the fibers are inserted, and this automatically will perform axial alignment, lateral alignment and angular alignment. So you can see here axial alignment. Then okay, that is about 3 different splicing techniques. Now splicing single mode fibers, if I splice single mode fiber, what may be the loss and due to what the losses occur? Okay, it's very simple. One is due to lateral, one is due to angular, one is due to the end separation. Okay, so splicing single mode fibers, we should know what is loss. Okay, again, don't go in detail with this. Okay, it's not required for the examination point of view, but you should know that there is a loss. Lateral, there is angular, there is a gap or a lateral longitudinal misalignment. This occurs due to splicing. Then optical fiber connectors. So earlier what we have discussed is just a joining process we come across misalignment, and once the fibers are joined, what are the problems exist, that is angular alignment loss and longitudinal alignment loss or a lateral alignment loss. Okay, then comes the optical fiber connectors. So before considering a connector used for a joining optical fibers, we will consider a characteristic or requirement of a good connector. We cannot just use any of the connector because splicing is an entirely different process, whereas connector is a device which is used to connect the optical fibers, join the optical fibers, and whenever it is required it can be removed or it has to be removed. So first what we do, we look into a principal requirement of a good connector. It is 6 marks question. Okay, they might ask you explain the requirements or explain the principal requirements of a good connector. It means how you are going to select a connector for a joining process. So that is the important one. So first thing what we consider is a low coupling loss. The connector what we select is to have a very low coupling loss. So what is that? A connector assembly must maintain stringent alignment tolerances to ensure low mating losses. Mating is nothing but coupling. These low losses must not change significantly during the operation or after numerous connects and disconnects. So that is very important. See, if I consider the connector, I am using it once, I have removed it, and I have again used it and I have removed it. It means numerous connects and disconnects. Even after n number of times the fiber connectors are being used and they are disconnected, they should exhibit low coupling losses. The loss shouldn't increase if you use it more and more. Okay, it means wear and tear should be 0. It should not change its performance. Then interchangeability. Connectors of the same type must be compatible from one manufacturer to another. So that is interchangeability. See, connector may be fabricated using one manufacturer. The same connector may be manufactured by another manufacturer of same size and for same fiber. Okay, so that should be compatible. So any fiber manufacturer's connector can be used in the design. Then ease of assembly. A service technician should readily be able to install the connection in a field environment. So whenever it is asked to assemble it, a serviceman can easily come and come and easily assemble and he can install it in the environment. Then in the location other than the connector factory, that is in the location other than the connector factory. So any field environment, if it is asked to connect the fibers using a connector, he should be able to do that. Then low environmental sensitivity. So whatever connector is used, the conditions such as temperature, dust, moisture should have a small effect on connector loss variations. So if the connector is used in a very high temperature, very low temperature, dust, where that atmosphere have got dust, moisture, etc., the effect should be very less. The loss due to the effect should be very less. Then low cost and reliable construction. The connector must have a precision suitable to the application, but its cost must be a major factor. So cost should be less and it should be reliable. Then ease of connection. Generally one should be able to mate and demate the connector simply by hands. There should not be any equipment required to remove the connector in a link. So easily you should be able to remove the connector using your hands. Okay. So that is mate and demate. That is connection and disconnection. Okay. So these 6 points you have to explain for a principal requirements of a good connector. Then connector types. So connectors are available in designs that are straight sleeve connector, tapered connector, expanded beam connector. Very simple concept of connectors. So the thing is, these two fibers which are to be connected are placed, and there are sleeves. We call it as a sleeves, and from this end the sleeve is rotated, or from this end the sleeve is rotated, or from either ends the sleeves are rotated. Sleeves are rotated so that the fibers are joined. The fibers are connected. And then, so you can see that first one is straight sleeve. This straight and tapered sleeve connector is based on the structure of the sleeve connector. Straight sleeve connector is connector sleeve is straight. Connector sleeve is tapered. Then expanded beam is nothing but this is based on the lens, or what we call it as collimating lens or focusing lens. So this is based on expanded beam from one lens to another lens. How the light is collimated or how the light is focused. One fiber, another fiber. Transmitting fiber, receiving fiber. So see that. So in the straight sleeve connector, the length of the sleeve and the guided ring on the ferrules determine the end separation of the fiber. You can see that this is alignment sleeve. This is a ferrule, we call it as a ferrule, and this is a ring, guard ring. Okay, so this is the physical alignment of the material, and you can see that this is alignment sleeve. This is another alignment sleeve. So the fibers are placed, and using alignment sleeve, they are adjusted. Their alignment is done. So here you can see that it is straight sleeve. Here you can see that the structure is tapered like this. In the first case, it is straight. In the second case, it is tapered like this. Tapered sleeve. So you can see that at the top and at the bottom. You can see that the fibers are placed. So this is a fiber, this is a fiber. Here this is a fiber, this is a fiber. Then the biconical connector used a tapered sleeve to accept the guide tapered ferrules. The sleeve length and the guide rings maintain a given fiber end separation. Okay, so these are used to hold the fiber properly without performing or without having any separation between the fiber end faces or fiber ends. Then expanded beam connector, it employs the lenses on the ends of the fiber end faces. So this is the end face of the fiber. Transmitting fiber, receiving fiber. There is a lens. There is a lens which is connected to the ends of the fiber. So whatever light which is focused on this particular transmitting fiber from a source or any other fiber, so that has to be coupled to the receiving fiber. Now this is a connector. This part is connector. This is fiber 1. This is fiber 2. So the light is emitted and it is focused onto the collimating lens. We call it as a collimating lens. And the lens will project the light, or the beams get expanded and they focus onto the receiving fiber. Even the receiver will have a lens. So that is going to receive the light and it is coupling into the receiving fiber. So you can see that these lenses either collimate the light emerging from the transmitting fiber or focus the expanded beam onto the core of the receiving fiber. Okay, so that is about three types of connectors and requirements of a good connector. Then the fiber to lens distance is equal to the focal length of the lens. I don't think you have a concept. No, it has been removed from your syllabus. So there is a concept of improving the coupling efficiency using lensing scheme. So using that concept, we are considering a concept of focal point or a focal length of a lens. So earlier it was there. Now coming to the advantage of this, since the beam is collimated, separation of the fiber end may take place within the connector. Thus, the connector is less dependent on lateral alignment. Okay, so there may not be a problem of lateral alignment. Then optical processing elements such as beam splitters, switches can be easily inserted into the expanded beam between the fiber ends, okay, if required. So this is the advantage. Okay, so one more topic is left. So most probably tomorrow I will complete this. Fiber couplers, star coupler, FBT. Yeah, fine. So maybe around 118. So maybe around 12 slides we have. So it may require around 15 to 20 to 30 minutes, okay, or even less than that. So after completion of this, we will start with module 3, okay, tomorrow. I'll just text you the timings. Maybe morning only, we'll see that, or afternoon, okay. But Tuesday and Friday, we will have morning only, because afternoon I'll be having aptitude sessions. Okay, I'll message you regarding this.